A lot of work has gone into this, and of course thank our Curry County taxpayers for putting this on. We will begin this, as always, with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. So let me go over our rules for all of our candidates this evening. We will begin this evening where each of our candidates will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves and give an opening statement. Then once we do the introductions, we will then go to our questions, where I will have a list of questions provided by many of you, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the questions. And as the questions are answered, we will have a clock running, and we will have some signs here that will indicate 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and stop. That's always the fun part. I got to do this several times last year. You guys will like that. All right. Any questions? Any questions about the format? All right, so we're on a time constraint here, so we need to end promptly at 8 o'clock. So we'll give each of our candidates a time at the end for a closing statement as well. Now, each of our candidates have put in a tremendous amount of effort and pride in the position sought after. Therefore, please be respectful throughout this process. And it is also typical to want to cheer for your candidate. However, we ask that you refrain from any type of outburst, clapping, or outward signs of disrespect in order to remain and continue to support them. And I think we've got Mark St. James back there who's going to keep the peace for us. Thank you, Mark. All right. Any last minute questions for me? Perfect. All right, Sabreena, we're going to start with you, and we'll go right down the table. What is your name, the position you are seeking, and your qualifications for the position?
So my name is Sabreena Houston. All right, my name is Sabreena Houston. The seat I'm seeking is school board position 3. I've been a resident of Brookings since 2015. I have 2 children in the school district, however they are towards the end of their time here. My husband and I also coached the recreational soccer team for 3 years. One of those years was a year we had to integrate the co-ed teams, which was very interesting and very fun. Get those girls to compete with the boys and mesh. That was awesome. Prior to that, I was an elementary school teacher in Las Vegas, Nevada. I taught 5th grade. I carry a Bachelor of Science in Education, so I have also served within a school district at some points and had to deal with some of the issues there. Then I had my first son and I stayed home and became a stay-at-home mom for a few years. From there we began a construction company which we ran in 5 states. I was in charge of compliance, which meant I had to go ahead and get us licensed, all tax items done, keep us up on the laws prior to getting out there. I was in charge of human resources, which meant I had to deal with our employees within the state laws and their needs, so I had to balance kind of my constraints with what they needed from me. I went on to also do that for our local business here in Brookings that we just sold. I was in charge of compliance, dealing with the LLCC to ensure that we responsibly serve food and alcohol to the public here. I was able to get to know much more of the community outside of the school system, which was my first introduction. And that was very interesting and very fun. And we actually ran that successfully and just sold that this year. Those skills, I believe, do apply to all of this because you do have to work within the constraints of the system and try and be creative to get what everybody needs within it. So I believe that a lot of that compliance, and in 5 states, as you can imagine, is a lot. I would have to license up, get all the tax stuff in order, and we would have multiple municipalities going on at the same time. And that would be done with contracts on board. So I was behind the We stayed ahead. What else do I have here? I think that everything I've done up to this point, which is much more than what I've just listed here, actually makes me a good candidate because I can take a problem and look at it from several angles, avoid some of the emotionality of it, avoid some of my past history. I believe that lessons are there to be learned from, and try and get to a solution that benefits the children, benefits the staff, and benefits everyone. I have good communication skills, and that should do me some.
Hello everyone, I'm Rochelle Jenkins. I'm running for the Brookings-Harbor School District, position 3 for the school board. And I am a mom, first of all, of 3. I have 2 currently enrolled in the Brookings-Harbor School District. I have my adult son, as I lovingly like to say, is my daughter-in-law's problem now, and is in the U.S. Army. He is a sergeant first class in the infantry. So if I got that wrong, he'd be very angry with me. And I have one grandson too, so that's awesome. My girls have gone through Kalmiopsis, Azalea, and into the high school. I am also a credentialed teacher at Pelican Bay State Prison. I teach adults, inmates, computer skills and employability. And that is no easy task. So I've got some experience in class management and a lot of experience in public school failures. Because every single student we get out of prison has a different, we like to call it Swiss cheese. There's gaps in their education and no 2 gaps are in the same place. So I've got a lot of experience I've been able to draw from working in the prison. It's a very unique experience. And also, I have experienced the good, bad, and the extremely ugly of this school district. The good is our teachers. We have a dedicated group of people that teaching our children is their passion. And they have been woefully unsupported. The bad is on March 10th, 2020. My daughter was sexually assaulted in the classroom at Azalea Middle School. The teacher was present.
Oh my God.
The teacher made eye contact with my daughter with tears pouring down her face, mouthing the words, "Help." And he turned around and walked away. The really ugly is when my daughter got to the office, the one place as parents we teach our children is the safe place to go. The then principal refused to call for her father or I for 2.5 hours and tried to coerce our daughter out of reporting the crime. That's so really ugly. And then after experiencing that, we've learned the school district has a history of sweeping things under the rug. It took a month to report to parents that a knife was removed from the school at the high school. A month. As parents, we deserve better. I am here to try to help bring the parents into the fold and open up what happens behind those closed doors. Thank you.
I'm tempted to just put this aside because I have a pretty much a booming teacher voice. Hi, I'm Robert Wilson, and I've been in the Brookings School District for 22 plus years before moving down to take a position at Pelican Bay State Prison. I had the privilege of working next to Rochelle, who is currently on a leave of absence. And I can tell you she's a real professional. And, but back to my background. I came down here in 1992. This was actually my first full-time teaching position. I had a part-time teaching position up in the Portland Public School District. Before I became a teacher, I worked in public accounting for 3 to 5 years. I am a certified public accountant, but I haven't practiced in 30 years. So I am what we call an inactive classes for 6 years before I switched over and started to teach in the social studies area at the Brookings-Harbor High School. I've always been a big reader. In fact, I love to read. Some of my finest moments in my life have been sitting up late at night with a flashlight as a young kid, thinking I was getting away with something that I truly shouldn't have been, but in reality, my parents thought it was great, as it turned out. But I love books, and I always try to instill a love of literacy and books in my children. And the library has always been really, really important to me. And I have spent some very fine moments with some of the most wonderful librarians that I've ever known. In fact, it was kind of like the bar Cheers, for those of you who used to watch that sitcom. You go in there and everybody knows you. And they would know exactly what you read. They would sometimes even, I get phone calls, hey, you know you love this author. I got it in, do you want it? And there's just nothing like being in a small town. I mean, it really, really is the greatest thing in the world. We need some guidance. We need some help at the library. And I work collaboratively very, very well. And I'm here to solve problems, both controversial and otherwise. I bring a wealth of experience of over 30 years in education. And I just want an opportunity to share that with the Chetco Community Board of Directors. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Sue Dodgen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I want to say thank you very much for being here this evening. Everybody has something they could be doing right now, not sitting here. Thank you for coming. We are here because we all believe in our system of representation, and so we are here to explain to you why it is we feel that you should vote us into positions to represent you. So who am I? Well, my name is Sue Dodgen. I'm a candidate for position 3 on the library board. There seems to be some confusion. There's actually 5 seats on the library board, but 3 of them are up for election. Bob is running for position 3, Ron is running for position 4, and I'm running for position 5. So we all 3 are seeking your vote. And I hope that clarifies how that works. I am qualified to meet the responsibilities of this position. The present individual in this position is functioning as the treasurer for the board of directors. And the reason I am qualified is because I have an abundant experience in accounting, mathematics, economics, supervisory positions with the National Bank, and I raised 5 kids, okay? And I have a husband who has stuck with me through thick and thin for 47 years. So, you know, we must be doing something right? So my experience, my mathematics led me to share my love of math with other students, and I have tutored all the way from Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, Trigonometry, Pre-Calculus, and Calculus. I've tutored and taught children and adults in these disciplines, and my experience has been that if you feel like you can't do math, it's because you were expected to deal with the material before your brain was ready for it. Go back again, because I bet you can do it now. Okay? I worked for Wells Fargo Bank. I started as a 30-minute teller, or 30-hour teller, and finished being the operations officer of a commercial branch. In that position, not only did I manage the cash flow of that branch, but I also was responsible for evaluating performance planning and review for my employees, and doing appropriate accounting and appropriate reporting. Let's see, in economics, if you haven't taken Econ 101 and Econ 102, you're missing something. This is micro and macroeconomics. They pertain to your life today. Check it out. I am very happy to be here. I think that I can make a difference for this board. Maybe you'll understand who I am a little bit better now. And I would love to see you and talk to you after this presentation. Thank you very much.
My name is Ronn Johnson. I am running for position 4 of the Chetco school, a commercial transcription company in the Bay Area, to doing consulting with different government organizations. And I moved here, and I raised my 3 sons here, and so I love this community, and I love our library. I used to bring my boys to the library on rainy days, to weekends in the summer, and I love to let them wander through the library and children's section and just pick out books and sort through them, just browse and graze on great books of literature. I've always appreciated to be able to come to the library and sometimes do some of my own work there as well. So I have a love for the library, and I have a great love for books and for literature. In terms of my serving on other boards, I have served on the soccer board here for several years. I served on the Delaware Orchestra board when I was still the Delaware Orchestra board, and I've served on other boards as well. And I'm good friends with Sue Dodgen and Robert both here, and they're very upstanding people, very trustworthy people. To see what you get, and they have a ardent desire to serve the community as I do as well. So one reason I run for this position is I would like to bring a region.
I'm having trouble hearing him.
Are you hearing?
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Can we start from the beginning?
Sure.
I have this great joke about a pirate. Okay. So what I think one of the things that most people that I know struggle with is a lack of a sense that different government agencies, whether local or whether state or county or even on national level, are being responsive to the people that they're supposed to be representing. Okay. And so, it's hard to do anything about DC, it's hard to do anything about Senate, but I think the more that we can use our efforts to increase transparency and responsiveness to the taxpayers in our little town here, I think that will be improving. That's something I'm going to.
All right, thank you, candidates. Now we'll move to our question and answer portion of the forum. So we're going to start with our school board candidates. You got to go first with the opening statement, so Rochelle, you get to answer the question first. And here is the question. What are the top issues facing our local elementary, middle, and high schools?
Well, I'm going to start with the all-encompassing. All 3 schools are severely dealing with children that have been put in a bubble. COVID did some serious damage to our children, and each child has been subjected into being put at home in a bubble, and they lost valuable time of interaction. We have all of these kids that have for over a year by themselves in their little space, not having to interact with others, not having to do, and then shove it into a hallway with a bunch of other kids and said, okay, figure it out, guys. And then everyone's wondering why our children are behind academically, socially, discipline-wise, and frankly, there's no one good answer for this. Every child is different, so that is our biggest district-wide problem. Our problem also district-wide is transparency, and you'll hear me say this ad nauseum. Our school district has a problem with giving us the bad news. That being said, we have members that are currently on the board. We have good and we have not so good. We have some really amazing people that are dedicated to our kids. We need to be, as parents, we need to require them to be more open with us and quicker. We need to be able to be supportive, and I also want to go into the economics. We are playing catch up because of years of neglect, because of budget issues. And we have really need to be diligent with the way we're spending our funds, and I really want to be a resolution to that problem.
So I think as far as education goes, we have a myriad of issues. It is very overwhelming at times, so we do need to knock those down to some of our more pertinent areas. I picked 5 I think should be addressed up front. We need better staff support within the system. We need to support the leaders, the admins, so that they can support the teachers, and then once the adults are supported, that will trickle down and they will support those children better. Our math and reading proficiency is just not acceptable. We also have a very odd skewing of the stats. We have, in 2022, and I found this on U.S. News and World Reporting, our elementary school was at 32% proficiency in math. Not good, not acceptable by any means. However, when we get to the middle school, it is 16%. Then you get to the high school, it is 20%. Now that graph in my mind should go up. There should be no valley. Now in reading, we have 44% proficiency at the elementary level, still not acceptable. But then we dip down to 40 at the middle school, and then somehow we raise up to 60 at the high school. This is a question we need to ask ourselves. How are these schools functioning? What is going on? Like I said, the graph should go up. You should start at elementary where the basics are taught, where the skills are built, and they should be able to build. It's like basically like taking Legos and making a set, correct? It goes up and you build your tower up. Somehow we're not doing that. We really need to investigate that. We have a huge opportunity for better elementary and middle school transitions. I believe that we need to collaborate and move these children a little smoother from 5th to 6th and 8th to 9th. That's where we're getting some behavioral issues. Maybe the 5th graders aren't ready. We're not preparing them correctly. So then they get to 6th grade and they don't know what to do. It changes everything. They've gone from one teacher their whole 5 years to now they've got 7 to deal with, and that's 7 different personalities. Student safety and staff safety is huge. As you said, we need to address that, both physical and mental.
All right, and now on to our library board candidates. Sue, you get to go first, and then we'll go Ron and then Robert. And the question is, what are the current top issues facing the Chetco Library?
Thank you, Brad. The top issues facing the Chetco Library are actually fairly significant. I believe that we have, probably in my opinion, the top of the list is a question of accountability. What I mean by that is currently the public is invited to come to a meeting on a Friday morning at 9 a.m. Did you hear me right? 9 a.m. on a Friday morning, come to a meeting and have 3 minutes to present a question or an observation. During that time, the board is quiet and appears to be distracted and not actually engaged with what's going on. And so this is a problem. There is no feedback. The statement is that there's no allowed feedback during real time. That is a provision I'd like to see changed. It's not set in granite. It could be changed. I think that we need to have feedback. I think the citizens need to be heard. The public that bothers to come on a Friday morning at 9 a.m. when they should be at work or should be at school or should be taking care of the kids or should be doing whatever it is they should be doing, they deserve to be heard. And so to that end, I would like to change that feedback mechanism. Additionally, I'd like to move the meetings to a more hospitable time. Maybe a 6 or 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Let's talk about it. I want to hear what you want. So accountability to the public, I think, is the top of the list, and feeding right into that is a discussion of how the library spends your tax dollars. You pay taxes to support the library. How is the library using your money, and how are they accountable to you in that process? Lots of important issues, but those are my 2 top lists. Thank you.
And Ron.
It's a question of what are the top issues facing the Chetco Library. I'm sorry, can we this again, so I'm sorry, my voice is a little tired. I would agree with what Sue said. I think the two top things that I see are one, a responsiveness and transparency to the public, the taxpayers of our community, for where the tax dollars are going and what they're being used for. And second, the mission of the library. What is it that we as a community want our libraries to be and to do? What do we want to use our spaces for? What do we want to use our staff and positions for? The taxes that we're paying. What do we envision as our library? What vision do we have of that? And so I think those are the biggest two things that are going on right now. And I would agree with Sue. I think in one way to have more responsiveness and transparency, and that is to have the whole board meeting at a time in which much more of the public can attend. We wish to. We would certainly be encouraging people to come, because we want not just to hear their comments or concerns, but also to give feedback in real time. I don't think it's much good to have concerns raised before you know what the board is going to say about the issues that are on the docket for the day. And I think I would like to see the question answered at the end of the meeting, so people can give their feedback to what we've been discussing and some of the decisions that we've been making. So I think that I would just like to see a greater transparency and a greater sense of community input and investment in our library.
Well, my big issues echo, although I've got some different words here, those of Sue and Ron's. Response to patrons in real time is a concern. Definitely moving the library meeting time to something where, for instance, all of us can attend, because as of right now, none of us could attend the current board time. Okay? So those are big concerns, as is financial responsibility and accountability to the community, how we spend our money. Okay, thank you. Procedures to some transparency regarding the procedure used to get rid of books would be something I think needs to be discussed, because I don't know if you've visited the library lately, but we are down maybe 40% of our books or so from once upon a time. That would be a favorable thing. Another thing, I think the gorilla in the room, how do we deal with the controversial topics? And that needs to be looked at very carefully. And I don't know if now's the time, but I can get into what I would suggest later. The American Library Association discourages restrictions to materials. However, if it is restricted, it has to be the least restrictive possible in order to accomplish the objective. Okay, but as a whole, it does frown on it, but it doesn't mean that we can't find a solution to the elephant in the room, which is the LGBTQIA books and materials. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to try this microphone so we can get two microphones going here. Our next question is back to the school board. Sabreena will go first. I'm going to warn you, this is a long question with multiple parts to it. So here we go. Is there a school paper or computer tracking system in place to collect all student grievances brought to the attention of the school officials? If so, where are they stored at the school, and what is the process? If it doesn't exist, how would you design it?
So I don't believe this actually exists. I know there's a referral system for the teachers to ensure that there's a tracking system on each student and what they have done, but there's not a system for the students to actually go in and safely report on major issues that they feel are happening. If I were to create something like this, I think we need some verbiage added to ensure that we avoid false reporting, that we allow students to understand that you cannot go in and arbitrarily accuse somebody of something. We know that that happens in our court systems. We have punishments for that. So the students will need to take it seriously, and it would need to be explained to them. I believe if we do have these documents, they would be best kept in the counseling office, as the counselors are the ones that are dealing with the behavioral issues. They're the ones that are dealing with the mental health. They're more trained in that area, and we need to keep it in a safe spot where the children know every teacher, every staff member does not have access to use this against them, nor for them. I would do a 3-tiered timeline of review on this paperwork. I would do one, the student file review at the time of incident when the report is provided. Student comes forward, fills out the form. The student that's being reported on his file is pulled. We kind of see what's the data there, what's going on. Do we have additional items? Do we have something we really need to address? Then I would do a quarterly to ensure oversight and data is not being missed. So this is just quarterly. This is just a quick review, if they can do it. They do split the children up, so I believe they do have the time to ensure we're not missing anything. The third would be beginning of the year to pre-inform and allow for possible early interventions. The best thing you can do is get ahead of student behavior as far as you can, and that has to be done from a non-judgmental place. So if the form is based off of a student, and maybe the student should have input on what they're filling out, then that way we have 3 ways of keeping track of it, and we are constantly informed on what is going on within the student. There's much more going on than what's in the classroom. These students have Instagram, they have social media. We need to keep up on everything.
Well, Sabreena is correct. I don't believe there's like an anonymous box where we can, our students or even parents can submit a grievance. However, there is a policy of going to the school counselor or a teacher in question that's directly affected with it. I actually looked in the student handbook, and I'm going to quote directly. The building principal or vice principal receives the report shall promptly investigate. There's no monitoring of this. Parents will be notified of the nature of the report involving their student. The administrator will arrange such meeting as may be necessary. So there's no time frame, and there is no monitoring, and there is no requirement of time to have the parents notified. I'm sorry if either of our children either reported a grievance or had a grievance against them, we have a right to know what's going on. If our child is being investigated by the school or a counselor or anybody for that matter, we have a right to know. We do have our officers that are at the school, and they do investigate crimes. And I have been fortunate enough, because my daughter was involved as she was a witness. I was notified fairly promptly. Wasn't within 24 hours, that's for sure. So I agree wholeheartedly with Sabreena's ideas of, yeah, we need to have a system. There isn't one. And the system must include parental knowledge. Thank you.
And now to our library candidates. Ron, you will go first, and then Robert, then Sue. Ron, here's your question. What is the American Library Association's role in defining needs, services, and goals of the Chetco Library?
Well, the American Library Association is it's a national organization now, and with arms reaching past that. They're a very well-organized group, and they provide services, support, encouragement, education to librarians and to people serving in library boards and like that. And as such, it's a very powerful, very strong, influential group. The role that I have, I would understand in reviewing their own website, I would see that whatever the librarian would be in terms of wanting to associate, wanting to be part of that, wanting to be involved in the support system, the education system, there's going to be a pull of loyalties, because the ALA has a different mission view of a library than I think most people that I know have about their public library. The ALA has kind of more of a global or a certain national vision for a library, as opposed to what the people in the local community want. And so that's very de-emphasized. One thing that I think is really important that I do share and appreciate about the ALA is they're very committed to freedom of speech and not censoring. And that is very important for us. At the same time, they tend to encourage that the librarians would be an interpreter of literature, not just somebody who is involved with education, but goes beyond that. For example, a while back we had the Dr. Seuss thing where people were pulling Dr. Seuss books out there. And the LA, and thankfully, so came out against that, and I was very appreciative of that. But at the same time, they encouraged that librarians would either attach things to the books or explain to children as they're reading the books why something is wrong with the book. So instead of allowing the child to enjoy the book, the librarian's task would be there to interpret the book, literature, and say why things are wrong. And I don't like that.
Okay, so the ALA is a tremendous resource for guidance for the librarians, and the emphasis that I also really like as I was reviewing it on the First Amendment is critical, because a library board has got to keep the library out of trouble, and that's something that they need to make sure that they do, and not pass policies that wind up resulting in, for instance, lawsuits and whatnot. So you have to respect the First Amendment, you have to respect people's access to information, and I can assure you, I think it's completely un-American to ban resources and books, but it doesn't mean that there can't be reasonable restrictions put into place. This gets back to the elephant in the room, but it is a global type of an entity, and it's not really truly reflective of what really should be happening necessarily, other than broadly at the local level. I think we have to make sure that the people that we have in charge understand what the library board wants and believes within the framework and guidance of the ALA, and also reflecting and responding to the fact that we live in a community that is beautiful and wonderful and full of people who are very concerned. Thank you.
Don't you hate being the last person to answer the question? So the American Library Association is a large organization, as Ron indicated. If you spend any time on their website at all, you could spend hours and hours, and Julie knows as she just raised her eyebrows. Yes, hours and hours. What I thought was very interesting is there's a very strong advocacy part to the website. They are very interested in promoting a particular set of agenda within the American Library Association and its partner libraries. Take a minute, look at it, American Library Association. It's very large. It encompasses a lot of programs. The libraries that participate have some benefits that accrue to the libraries, connections as much as anything else, and there are also programs to reward compliance with the objectives of the association. There's rewards. When I say rewards, I shouldn't say rewards. What I should say is awards, okay? Okay, be clear about that. So, having said that, I want to point out that their criteria is really loosey-goosey about what it is they think is acceptable and not acceptable, except they do skew towards the direction of the same place we go, which is freedom of speech. We don't want any person to not be able to express themselves, but we also recognize that children are children, and they have not got the emotional or intellectual development to deal with a lot of things. We hold their hands when they cross the street for a reason. So we need to be careful that we take care of our children, and within the confines of the library ALA and within our library's material selection process. We need to take a critical look at how we are handling that process. Thank you very much.
And now back to our school board candidates. Rochelle, we'll go with you first. What do you know about the transparency of the school-based clinic, parental rights and non-parental rights based on a student's age?
I was actually at the school board when the presentation for Coastal Community Health Clinic was presented to our school board. And I was thankful for JTOS put up a couple of, hey, I've got a couple of concerns I want to be touched on. Unfortunately, Jay's concerns weren't able to be iterated and they weren't answered. And I bet you a buck they were about the same as mine. We have a health clinic that is now inside our secure perimeter. We've already discussed, I worked at a prison. Security is kind of high on my agenda. And in the presentation they gave, they readily admitted that they would be treating both students and members of the general public. One of the services they provide is people in mental crisis. That is a huge red flag to me. Why did you stick a clinic that's going to potentially help somebody, which, don't get me wrong, this is a needed service to our community, but why did you stick it in the most vulnerable place in our community? You stuck it in the middle of our kids' schools, inside the perimeter, and there's been no answer as to how they're being brought in and how they're being vetted. That is a huge problem. It does state on their website that they do require parental knowledge if they are treating the children, which is a good thing. I think this is a wonderful service for our community. However, it needs to be outside the fence. And there are locations, even on school grounds, put it next to the admin building. There's electrical available to it, all the services they need, but it's outside of the fence.
So I actually went on the school website to look up the clinic. And your concerns are probably, I don't know anything about the treatment of others. The way that it's being presented on the actual school website, it is that to treat students and families. And it is actually a very good idea. It is a roving clinic. It is a nonprofit in collaboration with our school district to offer medical assistance to those that are lower income, maybe can't get access. You have to fill out this application every year to qualify. However, under the confidentiality portion, they do suggest that students are encouraged to discuss visits with their parents. However, they refer to the Oregon state laws 109-610, 109-640, 109-675. 610 is minors are treated for STDs without parental consent. Parent who does not consent will not be billed, but also cannot stop the treatment. 675 allows 14 and older to access mental and emotional addiction issues with parents before end of treatment. So they will be notified at the end of the treatment. So your child can be put on Prozac. You'll be notified at the end. However, my question is, with this, it seems like a bit of a Trojan horse. It presents as this really good thing. However, once you give this consent for the year, they have access to all of this. This is in the fine print. So you're going to put my student on Prozac. You may put my student on Xanax. And they turn 25. And they may have an addiction. Do I get to bring them back to the clinic and the school to fix them? Do I get to bring them back for help? I think that parental consent needs to be upfront and parents need to be involved at all times. I don't think that putting in fine print or a opt-in, because it's actually you give consent or you don't. Once you fill this out, this covers the whole year. And then after that, it's good for 36 months. So once you think you've made it that 24 months, oh no, that covers the next several months. They can prescribe medication. They can treat things. They can prescribe birth control, which I don't necessarily have an issue with. It is 15 and older, and I do feel that that age group needs some access if they're not comfortable speaking with anybody, because teenage pregnancy has been a very big bane on our education system, and if any way we can help them to avoid that is okay.
Thank you. Now to the library board. This is a long question, so bear with me. Carla, you go first. All right, Article 7, Board Responsibilities, Section C states, make decisions based upon the wishes and needs of the public and place the needs of the public above the ambitions of the board of the district. Is the responsibility subjective in nature, noting that the needs of the public expressed over a year have been ignored?
Okay, so if we're not listening to the public, then we're not doing our job. And this kind of gets back to the way the meetings have been conducted for quite some period of time, that it's not acceptable. You have to listen to the needs and desires of your community and respond to them, and not think that you're an island that's untouchable. That's just not the way that it works. So absolutely respond to the people, listen, hear them, address them in a timely fashion between the community's input and the board, and come to a resolution. To allow this to go over a year without being satisfactorily addressed is, it just should never have happened. So, yeah, better listen.
I'd like to dovetail on top of Bob's comments. I totally agree. You know, if we do not have an ear inclined towards us from our board, then we have, dare I say it, taxation without representation. Dare I say that? Can you hear me? Yeah. I would like to take a minute and talk about the budget. And you may or may not know anything about this. The library board is prepared to have a $1.4 million budget coming up for the coming year. There's $863,000 that is expected to be collected in tax revenue from your pocket and mine. And I would like to point out that we have some question about how we are using that funds. The question was actually, what about the Section C, making decisions based upon the wishes and needs of the public? Were you asked what you wanted in your new library? I missed that postcard. Were you asked if you wanted to remove approximately 50% of the books from the library? I did work at the library for a number of months, and I was part of the process that took books off the shelf and discarded them and sold them to you back at pennies on the dollar at the Friends of the Library book sale. Were you asked if you wanted those books to be taken out of circulation? No. I wasn't. So there's some things that have happened. The initial objective was to replace the carpet, and yes, the carpet needed replacing. You can't roll wheel carts on the carpet without destroying it. But it became the carpet, and then it was the lighting, and then it was the paint, and then it was moving the walls. So I think that the board needed to have a little bit of oversight about how your money was spent. And we are coming up on another opportunity for spending more money to improve another space called Makerspace, which will also be used tax dollars as well as library, Friends of Library funds. I could talk about this longer, but my time is up. So thank you very much.
All right, can you hear me? I'll try to speak up. So again, what about the section C says make decisions based on the wishes and needs of the public, because the needs of the public above the ambitions of the board of the district. And this again comes back to the pull from the ALA. We have a national group that has its own agenda, its own mission, ideas, and focus and thrust of what they want to see the local libraries do. And that's in with no taking into account what you, the taxpayers, actually want out of your library. And so the question is, who has the control and influence on what your library does with its money and its staff and its resources? I think it ought to be you. And the bylaws agree with that. What we have in the ALA, this massively powerful group that has basically a social activism spirit behind it, the mission, and really wants to see the library used as a platform for different types of social activism. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know many people who think of the library that way. And so the question is, do you feel have a voice in what's happening? So but how many of you were asked about getting rid of the books or these other ways the money is being spent? I think that we need a much greater input from the community, and that's what we would seek. We would want to find out what it is that you want from your library, and how can we work together to make it pass. Can you hear me still? Okay, all right. So it's about that this is our library. This is the library of Brookings-Harbor area, and it should be serving the purposes, the interests, and the desires of our community. And it's fine to have other larger groups as resources and as tools, but to serve our interests as Brookings-Harbor District.
Thank you, Ron. Back to our school board candidates. Sabreena, you're up next. In 2022, the elementary school's math proficiency stats were 32%. The middle school was 16%, and the high school was 20%. Reading stats for the elementary school were 44%, the middle school was 40%, and the high school was 60%. What is your strategy to raise the proficiency stats for 2023 and beyond?
So I think that we need a multi-tiered strategy. A couple of the ideas I do have, however, we have to fit it to our district. Our kids would be to look within our current talent pool. We do have an issue with hiring, just like anybody else. We don't always have places for people to live, so sometimes we kind of miss out on those really exceptional teachers and staff because they don't have anywhere to live. So looking in the pool that we've got in front of us and maybe moving the students around to them. We group the students as needed, and then we move them to the teachers that can better serve them here and there. So for reading, we've got some teachers that maybe are more proficient at reading and some that are more proficient at math. There's nothing wrong with bringing those students to those teachers. I know the old ways, and I feel them. I was a 5th grade teacher. That was my class, my kids. However, when I had a math lesson I couldn't do, I needed to go next door and have mine help me. My students were not. So I shared with her. She came and she did the lesson, and boom, my kids were up, and that's all that mattered at the end of the day, not my kids. I think we can actually utilize some of the high school students, maybe offer to pay them to do a tutoring program. I'm sure they volunteer to do tutoring, but if you know a high school student, they like money, they're saving up, pay them. Let's find something in the budget to pay them to go help the younger students. That would take some of the strain off the teachers too, and the adults at the school. What else did I have in this area? Oh, I would love to encourage the retiree population to get in there and possibly help with the student achievement, help do some tutoring. That would get actually students access to the older groups and some of that richer information that we might be losing over time. Community involvement will be huge with that. And a lot of it is not worrying so much about the test. I don't know if you've heard teaching to the test. Sometimes those standardized tests do not cover what these students know. I had bad testers, I had kids that got nervous, and we often weren't where we needed to be for the time the test was brought down because we were trying to catch up. So that's my time.
I, as a mother, have experienced both of my girls at different points in time have struggled. My son really struggled. And a little extra one-on-one time or group time with like children that are struggling on the same thing does wonders. So I'd like to pull, first of all, we have a great community, and if we tell the community, usually when we say we have this XYZ problem, there's usually more than a few people that are willing to step up and say, hey, because what took my older daughter from failing math to actually being in college math was I had the resource. I had a friend that is an exceptional math teacher. And just spending an hour with her once a week made all the difference in the world. If we can develop a private-public partnership to invest in each one of these kids, putting them together where they can see I'm not the only one struggling with this subject. So that boosts their morale a bit. And I agree wholeheartedly with Sabreena that standardized testings are all fine and dandy because you have to have some kind of benchmark, but it is not the full picture of what our kids are capable of or even where they're at. I think if we put just a little bit of time, a little bit of tutoring, we will get our kids up and start seeing the upward slope. I've seen it with my children, and I've watched our community pull together, and I think if we reached out as a school district and started that partnership, that we could do some wonderful things for our kids.
And back to our library candidates. Sue, you get to go first on this one. What is the working relationship between Brookings Core Response Organization and the Chetco Library, i.e., should the Chetco Library provide warming centers for the homeless?
Thank you for the question. If you are not aware, it turns out that in our community, we have a number of people who don't have a regular place to sleep at night. They've been referred to by various terms, unhoused, homeless, and some other less savory terms applied to them. They're people and they need help. There's no question about that. We have a loving, generous community. There's a lot of help available in this community. The question really is, should the Brookings Library be the point of contact for people who are in need of these services? That's the question. And I think the answer, in my understanding of the problem, is that we need to look outside the library for help for the folks who need help. The reason that I feel that way is because when you look at your property tax bill, you're paying property taxes to support the library. If you don't have a property tax bill because you are a renter, guess what? You're paying property taxes to support the library as part of your rent. So the people who are paying property tax are the ones who should have primary, sorry to say it folks, I know you don't like it, primary consideration how their money is being spent and whether they can access the services that are provided by their property tax money. The problem becomes when you have people who are not paying property tax and they are standing around the front of the library or occupying the chairs in the library. Those resources are not available to the people who are paying property tax. People need help. There's no question about that. Should the library be providing that help, or is that better provided by another community organization within this wonderful community that we have? Thank you.
Just so remember my name is Ronn. I think my phone is right. Okay. So, as Sue was saying, we do have a problem. We do have an issue with people who do not have a place to stay and have from time to time more or less accumulate themselves in the Brookings-Harbor area. It's a real problem. It needs to be looked at. We need, as a community, to think about how we want to handle that. The question is the library the best place to have that as a center? So the question is, one is, we may agree there's something to be done. We may agree that a mission needs to be fulfilled, but sometimes missions are not compatible geographically. And so, as you were saying, when people are coming in, I spoke with a young lady the other day who was going in for the first time since COVID into the library, and she had passed through a group of people, unhoused or homeless people, to get there, and she felt very uncomfortable doing it. She didn't feel safe doing that. Whether or not she had a reason to feel unsafe or not, that's not the issue. The issue is that in the library board's desire to be more inclusive, to include services to these people, the actuality is that they have become more exclusive to the taxpayers and the patrons of this community. So in terms of the primary emphasis, I think that needs to be said. And we do need to address this issue. I don't think that the library is the best place, because that's where we take our children, and that's where mothers take their children to enjoy the library and to be safe and not to feel threatened in any way, whether it's nowadays or not. It should be a safe place for people to take their children, and that's my primary concern with that.
Yeah, going last is pits. We do live in a wonderful community. Boy, if anything, 30 years here in Brookings has taught me is there's just a lot of concern, a lot of love from person to person, and groups to groups, and there's a lot of interest in helping out folks. I mean, you go to the annual awards banquet at a high school and see the hundreds of thousands of dollars of scholarships, and that's just one example. There's a lot of stuff that we never even hear about. Now, the library should not, under the umbrella of social activism of the ALA, be doing this. I mean, we go there, we bring our kids, grandkids, and we want to go in and we want to check out books, other resources, and I had an unfortunate experience of encountering basically a half-nude, unhoused person kind of taking a half bath, brushing his teeth one time in the bathroom. And it's like, whoa, you know, I mean, I just eased by him, but, you know, this is really the purview of the churches, other organizations that are a little better set up or equipped to handle this sorts of thing, if not a dedicated campsite, campground, something, or actual facilities, stick-built facility, I don't know, but it doesn't mesh with the mission of the public library. I expect my property taxes to go to support the library, not a social activist agenda. Thank you.
And back to our school board candidates. Here's your question. As an elected school board member, what would your strategy be to address student disruptive behavior issues in the classroom and hallways?
I don't know if all the parents are aware of this or not, but we have a fairly new disciplinary statistics system. And as a parent and talking to fellow parents, it is woefully being applied unevenly. It's allowing little problems become great big problems. And for an example, at the junior high, there's a group of kids that love to go and scream in other kids' faces that are smaller than them, take their backpacks, throw them in the trash. Overall bullying, which we all can agree is unacceptable. And it goes unchecked. Kids slammed into lockers. It's not okay. But it's allowed to continue. It's allowed to continue and continue and continue until the kid that's being bullied snaps and fights back. And guess who gets disciplined? And guess who gets treated like the victim? I have a huge problem with this disciplinary system. Right now, junior high is always, I jokingly tell the junior high teachers that they should get hazard pay because it's a difficult age to teach. And God love everybody that does and comes back every day. But to allow it to fester into the problems that we have today, we have to start with the small issues. The teachers need to have the support from the administration to stop the small items. And right now, they don't have the support of our current administration. They are basically told to turn a blind eye, and that needs to be reversed immediately.
I would have to disagree. I don't know if they're all turned to turn a blind eye. We do have a referral system in place, however, it is more of a tracking system as opposed to a fixing system. The way I look at this is there's more classroom management support needed, and it needs to match this generation. You cannot match what I was. You cannot match what you were. We did not have the technology these children have. We got to go home on the weekends and take a break. Classroom management is important. I was told without management there will be no education. You'll just have chaos all year. So your first month is spent getting that management together, getting that buy-in from those students. I think a lot of that is we have something called sound discipline we just instated. We like to buy programs with pretty names that sound good on paper, but they don't match the students we're staring at. So I feel like the teachers are more of a valuable resource when it comes to this. They're on the ground. They're dealing with our kids. They know what they're seeing. So I would think that classroom management should be based on those teachers who are successful. And believe me, I've looked at my son's report card and I know which ones are successful and which ones are having a hard time, because he will pass the ones he can handle and he will fail the ones he's not dealing with well. I also think that punishment should always as closely match the infraction as possible. When we were growing up, if you tagged up a building, go clean the building. The punishment and the consequence need to match for it to make sense to the child. An arbitrary punishment or referral that means nothing isn't going to change that behavior. And that's what we're trying to do, is teach them. We need to teach them critical thinking when they get into these things. Mediation is a huge thing. Teaching them to sit down together, if it's not a violent or a sexually driven incident, sit together, learn how to talk it out, or learn how to go separate ways, the way adults do, correct? I don't like everybody. There are people I just choose not to interact with. But that's what we need to teach them how to do in the future. Another portion of it would be, let me see, that was mediation. Oh, getting them to understand too, we need to look at the whole picture. The victim-perpetrator mentality doesn't always work. We don't always know what's going on outside the classroom.
And back to our library candidates. Ron, you're first, and then Robert, and then Sue. This is a two-part question. The question is regarding the collection, development policy, and removal of books policy. Your policy states, eliminating literature considered inaccurate or misleading. What kind of literature is inaccurate or misleading? Who determines that? Part 2 of the question. Your policy states, eliminating literature that no longer meets community needs or interest. Who determines that?
Thank you. I think actually that this is a question that should be addressed to the board as existing right now, since they're the ones that have been making this decision. When it comes to my thinking about eliminating literature that is considered inaccurate or misleading, we've been dealing, you have to be almost brain dead to not be aware of the social unrest and controversy that's been going on around wokeism in our country. Lots of people, there are people who want to say that certain things are wrong just because they say so. And we have people that are offended on behalf of other people. And to say that something is inaccurate, misleading, exactly, says who, in whose opinion, right? This gets back to the idea of who is the interpreter of literature, who is the one who's responsible for determining as an adult, my own parents, or our children, who determine that for them. Is that not the role of the parents? Do we not also have that role in the school? The ALA would have your library be the interpreter of literature, the one who determines what is inaccurate or what is or not, what is appropriate, and to either in person or in terms of attachments to say what books are inaccurate, what books have things wrong with them. I think that's going too far. I think that people need to be allowed to develop and to read these things, be exposed to themselves, and I think that we need to return the responsibility of parents to the children for determining what they read, what they're exposed to, and talking with their children about the things that they're reading. That discussion can happen at home. I don't believe that that's the role of the board or the library staff to determine.
Okay, so I too have the same reaction to number 5. That really should be directed to a current member of the board, because quite frankly, it needs to be. But having said that, literature that is inaccurate or misleading, if it doesn't have, look, if the facts aren't there, if it's just how somebody feels and writes about it with no basis in concrete evidence, well, that's certainly misleading. And who makes that determination? How about thinking people? You know, how about the citizens of this community? You know, when I think back to the fact that half of our books are missing, and who decided? Was it the number of times it was checked out? Was it the merits of the book, the classic book that was pulled and dumped and sold for pennies on the dollar? I mean, the woke agenda, excellent point of view. I mean, there's nothing that backs up the woke agenda, you know? And so the second part of this, kind of literature no longer meets the community needs or interests. So that's a good question, because if you don't ask the community, then how are you going to possibly know? You know, if you don't establish a group of interested citizens who really value education and literacy to get their feedback and expertise, and we've got a lot of really capable, smart people in this community. How in the world would you know? You can't have a librarian exclusively making that call. This would never have happened with Suzanne Fernandez. Never. Thank you.
My turn. Okay, so this really kind of boils down to how do you decide what is worthy and what is not worthy? Clearly, the library cannot have every single book published. You'd have to be the Library of Congress if you were going to do this, and we don't have the space for all the books. So you have to decide what's important. So what's important? Well, that really kind of depends on the community. You know, we have communities that are interested in nothing other than the best tools to dig a furrow so they can plant the seeds and get the best yield. That community wants a different kind of book than the community that is really interested in swimming pool design. So it's the community. So Bob is right. We need to be talking to our community. Right now we don't have a feedback mechanism. Our library board of directors does not tolerate, that was a very nasty word, does not engage with the public in real time when there's questions. So how do we know what people want? I would like to see polls taken. I would like you to tell me what you want. I have an email address. I have time for you. I'd like to know what you want. So that's really my first question. And then I will tell you, as a librarian, as a staff at the library a couple years back, that I think I mentioned this before, my job was to decommission books. And the books that were decommissioned were selected by one of the librarians at the library now. And I will tell you that the library staff there is a dedicated group of people who really take their job seriously and want the best thing for the community. But this particular person was pulling the books off the shelf. I asked her why, and she said, well, because they haven't been checked out. So pulled off the shelf was a book called Rose and Bloom, written by Louisa May Alcott. Somehow this book is not important. It is a coming-of-age story, and it was not important. Instead, it's better for us to have anime, because go anime. So thank you very much for your time. Who makes that determination? It should be the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Back to our school board candidates. Sabreena is first. Here is your question. What is your stance on CRT and gender grooming in the schools?
That's a hot button issue, isn't it? So, I don't know particularly if we have this issue in our specific district right now. We do have individuals, and there's always going to be those individuals out there that are going to get their point across. They're going to use your children as a way of getting their point in. I don't necessarily agree with CRT. I agree with teaching history. History is a way to learn from the past to better your future. And I think our kids know that. And I think CRT takes it to the extreme, and we need a victim and an oppressor and all these things that they don't necessarily move us forward in education, and they don't take our history and properly train our children to learn from it. So that we don't do it again, which we're not going to. We all know that. We agree. We're not going to repeat those. What was the second portion? Oh, gender grooming. If my son comes to you and tells you he feels like a girl, I'm willing to entertain that. I'm a parent. I'm willing to listen to my child with anything they need to say. However, it is not okay for a teacher or an administrator or any staff member not to contact me and my husband and request that we come in and discuss it as a family. If we come in and look neglectful in any way, if we come in and seem somehow abusive or intolerant, then by all means, get the family help. Let us all work together. Don't work with my child alone. Because like I said, you're not going to take them back when they're 30. What if you do gender reassignment? And my child decides when they're 35 they don't want to be that anymore. You're not going to redo everything that was done. I can't bring them back to Brookings-Harbor. So I need to be involved. And if I'm not involved in an appropriate way that you think benefits my child, then by all means get some mental health professionals in and help the family. In helping the family, you help the student. The family is forever. Teachers, while important, they are a small portion of my child's life. They're a year, maybe 4 years. And then I am forever. So I want to be involved.
You're here. You are the life givers. Our problems are right now that we need to focus in on is academics, arts, athletics, and vocational training. Once we have all those 4 things right as rain, then we can start bringing this other stuff in. That being said, if my child, like Sabreena says, if my child comes up to you and says, hey, I want to be another gender, I expect to be notified. I expect to be told, because they're our children that we're trusting the school district to educate. Not change, not indoctrinate, not anything like that. You are a child, my child is being trusted you to be educated and educated only, not manipulated. Working at a prison. If you're under the age of 24 when you commit a homicide, you're considered not able to be able to have the thought process of know the consequences of what you've done. How can children in high school, even junior high and elementary, the same theory applies. You just don't have the cognitive skills, and the school district has no business going behind parental back. This isn't an issue within our school district, although I do think we need to have some safeguards in place to make sure it doesn't. It's a huge issue, and it's a liability issue. If we have teachers go off and try to have a child secretly have a surgery, God forbid, what happens if they have a stroke on the operating table? Who's liable for taking that child without parental consent? Brookings-Harbor School District would be. So it's not an issue, but I think we do need to, in fact, make sure that we have it written so it doesn't happen.
Thank you. Back to our library board. And a reminder, just please keep your cell phones on silent if you would. All right, our order is Robert, Sue, and Ron. And here is your question. Board members have stated moving forward in relocating any books to a more suitable location for those requesting certain material is against the law. What law is that?
There is none. It's that simple. And I would challenge anybody to say otherwise. But you can get in trouble, okay? So don't think that that can't happen. If you restrict access, you can get in trouble. But you can take reasonable steps. I mean, you can get sued, literally, okay? But you can take reasonable steps to deal with the situation, such as setting aside an area away from the children's section for, well, let's talk about the LGBTQIA materials. That's monitored by library staff. You could have children's parents or guardians sign a permission form that either allows access to the material or restricts it. You could take a sticker, put it on a card, and the library can simply, that would designate a sticker or a non-sticker whether or not the child could be allowed access to review and check out materials that are kept in this area. I mean, the ALA does not want restrictions, but it does accommodate reasonable restrictions, the least restrictive type of a situation to accomplish an objective. So it is not, quote, against the law, it can be done. Thank you.
The dance is getting exciting. I can't remember if it's my turn or not. So how are your backsides doing? Having fun sitting in these chairs? Thank you for sticking with us and hearing the answers to these questions. We've all of us invested a fair amount of effort in trying to clarify issues, and we really appreciate that you are here tonight. So what about this? Is it against the law? I have not seen the law that is against. I don't believe there is a law. Bob is right. There are consequences for all of our behavior. You step out in front of a car, guess what happens to you, right? There are consequences. The question is, what are the consequences and where is the gray area? And so to that end, I think that the books that we have in the library are important because everybody needs to have their perspective said. However, I will tell you that I will not vote for banning books because of this, but I do think that the innocence of children needs to be respected. And material that is normally the purview of parents should remain the purview of parents. Some have said that parents are not stepping up to the job and not doing their job. That's unfortunate. It is true, but does that make the library's responsibility to educate your child in sexual matters and in gender questions? I don't think so. I think that that's a mistake. It infringes on parental rights, and we still have a system where the parents raise the kids and not raised by, to quote, a village. Thank you very much.
Okay, again, the question is about relocating books. I don't know about how many of you have been in very, very large metropolitan libraries. I have. I grew up in Portland. They had a great library. I've been in different university libraries. And I can tell you that those libraries will have very expensive old books. You better believe they're in a different section. They're not just up on the long side of a Tom Sawyer or Dr. Seuss. They are in their own section, they are protected section. They are watched over because they're very precious. So the library had no problem locating those things in their own area. So that tradition is there. It's something that a library can do. That's what libraries do. Okay. So the question about this is, again, one of the things that we all agree on, is we're not about censorship. We're not about banning books. We absolutely uphold the First Amendment right. The question is about suitability. We all recognize it, every one of us at some level, that children have to be protected from some things, to allow it to be children, to allow them to have their innocence. And so, there are ways to uphold the taxpayers' right in their own library to access anything they want, and at the same time do so in such a way that protects children so that they can, without problems, graze through and browse through their own library, the sections, and not inadvertently run into things that are very controversial, and in some ways even harmful in some people's opinions. So it's about upholding the rights both of free access to information and also protecting the innocence of our children. So that's what I think. And again, I think libraries do this for very expensive books. Why can't we do this for other books as well?
All right, and back to our school board candidates. Here's your question. Are students mandated to address their fellow students by their gender pronouns and current gender names? If so, why? And do you agree?
I don't believe there's an official written rule that states you have to or you're going to be suspended. However, I am a real big proponent component of being nice. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. So intentionally calling somebody by something that they don't want to be called and making them uncomfortable, it's not okay. And our children should be taught that. Do I think it should be grounds for suspension? Absolutely not. It's a learning moment. Bring them together and say, hey, you call this child XYZ. How did that make you feel? When you have to face the person that you harmed, one-on-one, without the group of friends around to show off for, it brings it home. And it was a teaching moment. But I don't believe the school district actually has a physical policy that you must or else. But I do think it's a good idea, and I think it's something that should be readily encouraged, is call people. It's no different than if a guy's name is Nicholas and he wants to be called Nick, and you constantly call him Nicholas all the time, and it irritates him. It's not nice. Stop it. There's no need for it. And teachers and classroom management, that's when they step in, hey, stop that. You know that's not okay. And then so on and so on. I really think it's a teaching moment. People try to make it more than what it really is. It's usually showing off for your group of friends. You take them away from their friends and you do a one-on-one learning lesson.
And so I agree, I don't think there's a mandate. I believe the children are highly encouraged and probably in a more intimidating way to do so. My question would be, when you speak to someone directly, do you use a pronoun? When I refer to Rochelle, I don't say she, I say Rochelle. So when you're using the pronouns, I don't believe you're actually using them directly. You may be in the background saying, hey, she told me this. And if they're across the room and they're not yelling it at you, I think a lot of the problems we're having with the pronouns, and look, pronouns are hard to teach in the first place, okay? Especially with our ESL learners. So that's just a mountain of time right there. So as we make up new ones or insist that they be changed because somebody across the room referred to you as the inappropriate they, them, or whatever you want to be called, there are times too where we can teach our kids that if they're not directly in front of you, confronting you, you don't need to go correct everybody. Like I said, if I see somebody smoking on the corner, I don't need to run up to them and give them all the information of why they shouldn't be smoking. They'll figure that out on their own. If you want to carry your own pronouns, by all means, do so. And yes, people should be kind and respectful to you. However, it's very rare that students are referring to each other as their pronouns as they're speaking directly to each other. Imagine they're using names, they're using whatever they want to go by. And if they're using it to tease each other, then of course, teachers should step in. But what we are here on fire about, remember, the kids will use against each other even more. We don't want to hand them the ammo, so to speak, to, hey, get us upset and show us our reactions and be upset the others. So I think we need to tone down the rhetoric on this a tiny bit, refocus on teaching kids what pronouns actually are first, and then we can explore what they want to be referred to as. And at that point, I don't even know in conversation, if I say young lady and the person I'm speaking to says I'm a boy, I'm more than welcome to just readjust in the moment.
And back to our library candidates. Our order is Sue, Ron, and then Robert. Here's your question. Any objection to scheduling all board meetings to 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. to allow more participation and discussion?
Thank you. Currently, you might remember me saying our library board meets at 9 o'clock on a Friday morning. This is a problematic time for many people because they have responsibilities. At a recent board meeting, there was discussion of the director identified several libraries in the area, and I've observed what time of day they have their meetings on, and the preponderance of them were on not a Friday morning at 9 a.m. Most of them were in the evening hours and the midweek time. The current library board discussed the director's findings among themselves and decided that 9 a.m. on a Friday morning works for me. So we don't have, at this point, we don't have the ability to interact for many people who are at work or at school or raising their children or doing any number of things. So yes, I thoroughly support moving library meeting times to a different time that's more accessible for more people. What works for you? Let me know. I'd like to know what you want, because I can't possibly know what is best for you, but if you'll let me know, I will definitely put your 2 cents in, because it's really important that you participate. This is your library, you're paying for it, it is the backbone of your community, it is the jewel, as the director knows and has said, it is the jewel of our community. It's a beautiful library, but you need to be active in it. The meeting yesterday afternoon at 2 o'clock was one I could not attend for a discussion, because 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday afternoon is just unreachable for me and for many other people. So let's move it to a time that works for more people. Yes.
So I echo what Sue said there. I was at the library board meeting the second week in April, and I was very happy to hear that Judy had recommended that the board consider meeting at different times and bringing before the board that other libraries do have that at times that are more accessible to the public. I was a little disheartened at the response to that. It wasn't necessarily enthusiastic. But I think it's very important. I think that being on a board in a community like this, you're taking on the a servant role. We are the servants of the public. We have a trust, and it will be our duty to be the ears to listen to your voices, your thoughts, your concerns, what you desire, what you want for the library, what you want the library to do, and what you see as the mission of what you want to do. It is our job to be responsive to you, and we need to have those meetings at a time in which more people than not can actually attend and be a part and have their voice heard. And that's what those meetings should be about. And again, going back to the idea of having time for the community to raise questions or for the comments should be, I think, at the end of the meeting, after they've heard the discussion on the board, and have a chance to have a real-time input into those types of decisions that are going on. So yes, I am absolutely in favor of assigning the scheduling of the board meeting to a day at a time that would fit the majority of people in our community, so that they have a chance to get them.
Asked again. Yes, let's change it so I can be out of the work.
All right, back to our school board candidates. Here is your question. When the next pandemic arrives, what will be your stance regarding mask mandates, injection mandates, and social distancing?
I would hope we learned from our first pandemic. In the beginning, we followed the rules very tightly. We were very afraid, and the science was there. However, over time, I think we should learn, as I said, we should teach history to learn from it. So the pandemic should be no different. The children were not carriers, as we know. I actually got COVID twice, 2 COVIDs, as we call it. And I followed all the rules. So I think when it comes to the children and the students, I don't think kicking them out is ever going to be a viable option unless we, of course, have a very serious disease that you can prove to us that people are just falling out everywhere, including the kids, because that was highly detrimental. I think the masks were detrimental. One of the most disturbing things I think I watched was my son is in band, and at the time he was playing clarinet. We went to the concert. We were all far back. They were on the stage. They had all been together all day with no masks. They were wearing masks with holes in them. So my son had to pump air through an instrument that's already hard to do. And they were awesome, don't get me wrong. However, it was the most ridiculous thing I had ever seen. And our community also needs to handle it according to our community, as we are not Portland-Salem, and we all have different needs. These children were accessing each other constantly, and then they would wear masks when we were around, so it didn't always make a lot of sense. So my thing is, follow the science if it makes sense, but also don't lose your critical thinking skills. Don't lose your human rights in that melee, because sometimes the scientists aren't right, and that's the point of science. There's a theory, They build on it, they learn about it, and sometimes they're wrong. I'm not saying we need to head dive into it wrong, you should upfront listen, but at some point, your natural inclination needs to kick in. What's good for your family, what's good for our district, and what's good for these kids.
I think more than anything, we have got to do a lessons learned with COVID, like a big old. We did some serious harm to our kids. The masking, the social, especially for our littles, kindergarten, first, second, third grade. So much of their social interaction is visual, and we took that away from them, and it's going to take us years to get it back. I am a huge proponent of choice, and choices with good, solid communication. We would like you to get this vaccination, and this is why. We're not going to kick anybody out because they choose not to. Keeping our kids together is wholehearted. Absolutely must happen. I was too at the concert with our children with the mask. She's not making it up. It was the most ridiculous thing we've seen in our lives, and it was mandated from Salem. If your kids want to have this concert, they have to wear a mask, and it's perfectly okay for there to be a hole in it. Okay, I worked in the medical field for 10 years in a past life. That kind of defeats the purpose of wearing a mask. We need to have common sense, and we need to have it as a small community, because our needs in the middle of a pandemic were far different than Portland's. Far different than Salem. This started out as an urban issue. Large groups of people in a small area, and that's how the disease progresses. I personally got COVID. I got it wearing an N95 mask. As Robert mentioned, that I am on leave because I have long COVID. Just to make an insult to injury. We need to make sure that we do better next time.
All right, thank you. Now to our library board candidates. And we're closing in on time here, guys, so this will be the last question before we move on to our closing statements. And here's your question. Are there any services that the Chetco Library provides that you would like to discontinue or see added, and why?
Well, besides moving away from things like providing services to the unhoused / homeless, yeah, I would like to mention some things that I would like to see added. I mean, libraries are all about education, lifetime literacy, bettering yourself through reading and accessing information. Why not establish a regular group? Because we have a huge talent base in this community. There are some of the most phenomenal people that I've gotten to know over the years. When I was at the high school, I would have guest speakers from all kinds of areas of expertise. Why not establish a rotation of guest lecturers or presenters at the library in the annex or the room that's right off the library? I forget what the name of that room is, I apologize. But you can have people coming in on a regular basis on nights or weekends or however it works out, and presenting on a wide variety of topics of interest. I mean, you could do polls with the community and find out what people are interested in, what they would like to see, and then see what your resource is. You could even beam them in by Zoom, people from all over the world. Then they could facilitate the conversation once it, the presentation was done, and answer questions. You could have book club meetings, speech club, hobby clubs. How about GED tutoring for the folks that never finished up their GED? I mean, there's no limit to what you could do in terms of really meaningful literacy education type of activities. So that's what I would like to see.
I thought these were first. Okay. Well, a couple of thoughts here. One is, again, the question of overlap. In so many of our governmental agencies overlapping their missions with each other, and it creates confusion, it creates bureaucratic hindrances to getting things done, it slows things down. So I think once again it comes back to what do we want as the mission of our library? And that we need to hear from you. And we really need to have a much more lengthy and involved conversation with our committee about what we want to see offered in our library, where we want to see that our climate and tax money and staff focused on. So that's the first thing, is to examine what things are overlapping, what things that can be cut back because our agencies are handling these things. Again, I don't think necessarily that our agency is the best suited for offering services to the homeless, the unhoused people. And all we have to do is look at the Medford Library to take our cue. That's where we're going. Because that's what happened there, and both the police and the city personnel there have put that library in notice, because it was creating, it was drawing so heavily on the services of the police to come in and break things up. So many crimes that were happening there. The other thing, I've been talking with a number of young people and things that they'd like to see. And I'll tell you what they'd like to see. They'd like to see that where you used, like, have a coffee bar out there. Young people would be drawn to a place where they could come, hang out, read a book, have a cup of coffee, and have it. You could have that so you don't break the liquids into the library property, but you could have that as a hangout place. And our kids need a hangout place, believe me, right? So that would be something that I would recommend for consideration to the board.
Okay. So Julie Rutherford, our director of our library, goes to a lot of trouble to produce a ton of reports that get handed out each month at 9 a.m. on Friday morning, second Friday. Did you get that? Sorry, I know it's getting old. I apologize. One of the reports that she has produced is about circulation, about physical items, audiobooks, ebooks, and physical items that get circulated. And we have really great circulation with our paper resources that you go to the library and check out. We have great circulation with Libby and Overdrive, a lot of participation there for e-readers. And Hoopla, if you haven't checked it out, you can get all kinds of different things on Hoopla. But the interesting thing about all of this circulation is that is working well, and that's a star for our library, no doubt about it. So what do we want to discontinue or see added? Well, let's keep Libby and Overdrive and the paper books, definitely, and Hoopla. But one of the things on this report that is produced is something that says there's 3 people on average that come in to do something called self-directed activities, all ages. I am not certain exactly what this covers. I should have talked to Julie about this to find out. I think it might be related to something called Makerspace. Do you know about Makerspace? It's an area that's dedicated for activities. So that, I would say, with 3 participants each month, maybe that's something to go. So what do we want to add? I think that we live in a diverse, very rich community. Do you know what a yarder is? Well, it's something you use when you're logging. Do you have any idea how many people who live here have professions on logging and fishing and know the history of this area? I'd like to see these people come in and give presentations so we can understand not only written literacy, but also cultural literacy. We have a very rich community here, and I'd like to see that developed more. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You leave the microphone down on that end of the table. So this will conclude our question and answer portion of today's forum. Now we'll move into an opportunity for each of the candidates to give a closing statement. Because we started here, Ron, we'll start on your end. You get to go first, and we'll move down the table towards you. Thank you.
The reason I would appreciate your work is because I believe in you. I think that our public institutions, including the library, should be responsive to the community, should be listening, actively seeking your input, what you want to see as the regional library, what you want to see your tax dollars invested, what you want your library to look like, and the things that you want want to see going on there, where the resources, the money, the staff, and the building are dedicated to. That belongs to you. It doesn't belong to anyone else. It's your tax dollars that pay for this. And it's you who should have the say on it. And so if you vote for me, that is something that I will actively pursue. We want to hear from you. We want to make this a much more transparent and responsive board to the needs and desires and the concerns of the community. So if you like me, that's what I'm working for.
I echo Ron's observations. Thank you. We really do want to help you get what you need from your library. It's very important that you tell us what you want. Otherwise, how do we know? I would like to point out, just as I did at the beginning of this conversation, that there are 5 positions on the library board. 3, 1, 2, and 3. 3 are up for election. If you vote all 3 of us in, 3 out of 5 in most people's lives is considered a majority. So I would like you to do your homework, investigate the positions of all of the candidates, find the candidate that explains your position best, and that's who you should vote for. I would like to hope it was for us 3, but I respect your right to choose, but the most important thing that you need to do is vote. This is your right. We have an unusual society, unusual culture that we actually get to select our representatives. There are plenty of places around the world where that does not happen, and it will not continue to happen here if we don't vote. So make sure that you get out and vote. Voting day is May 16th. So you should be getting your ballots in the mail. Vote.
Yeah, I wanted to echo that too. Yeah, please, whatever you do, whoever you vote for, just vote, participate in the process. You guys are the greatest resource ever. You know, this community, like I echoed, has a lot of capable people, a lot of concerned people, and I am one of them. And I love the library, and I'd like to see maybe the hands of time, not in terms of let's just say modern, but bring back some of the magic that used to be in our library. If you vote for me, I will work well with whoever is on the board. I'll listen to you in real time. I will represent you, be very conscious of all viewpoints, and work to gain a consensus and do everything that I can to improve the library going into the future. So, thank you very much.
I would really appreciate your vote on May 16th, but no matter how you vote for, who you vote for, please vote. It's important. I have a lot of experience that I bring to the table. I spent 8 years as a public information officer for a California state agency called Caltrans. I am the person that had to go to the public and hear what was wrong and go back to Caltrans and make sure it got fixed. And then I was the complaint department. I have experience of bringing an agency that is known for not being real approachable and bringing them to the people. I have 31 years experience as a mother. I've worked with 7 different school districts, and I'm a regular school board attendee. Unfortunately, many of the times I am the only parent in the room. I want to help restore transparency to our schools, and we want the trust back in our school district. I want to bring public-private partnerships, such as what is rebuilding our school football field and track. We have a great community, and they have come together, and they are going to redo our field and our track, and it's amazing. I want to bring public comments. So when you go to a school board and you fill out the little blue card, do you know all you do is talk for 3 minutes and that's it? I want your comments to become an action item on the next agenda, because it needs to be addressed, because they don't have to say a word when you make public comment. That is very off-putting. That's why people don't go, because they don't feel like they're being heard. I want the medical facility out of the gate immediately. It's a it is absolutely something our community needs. There needs to be some changes to the parental knowledge, absolutely. But it needs to be outside the fence. If the shooting incidences at the schools and stuff has not taught us anything, people, we need to learn. Get it out of the fence. I want to secure the transition program. We didn't really approach this, but they're going to put in an old storage facility over by the football that has access to the secure perimeter, a transition program they're calling them children, 18 to 21-year-olds that are homeless or in danger of becoming homeless, and teach them how to cook and clean. Great service. I highly recommend it. It needs to not have access to our secure perimeter. And I want to be a public advocate. I want to be your voice. And if nothing else, this meeting has not taught you is that I'm a mouth. So let me be your mouth. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stick to script with this one. I do better when I thought ahead. Our district is unique. Our potential lies in our community connections, our smaller class sizing, and our ability as a smaller district to build what our students require. We are not Portland, Salem. We are Brookings-Harbor. There are many issues facing education today which can feel overwhelming, but if we remember who we are and focus on our 3 schools and the people in them, we may be able to become an example instead of another broken cog in a larger national wheel. Schools are responsible for ensuring our children are academically and socially ready for the larger world they enter. Whether that's college or living and working in a larger urban center, graduation is not a high enough bar. Children should be approached as individuals who require critical thinking and self-driven decision-making skills built around the reality of the future they are facing, not the fears or personal beliefs of the adults around them. Local school boards contribute to this collaboration by serving as a mediator between these facets of student life and making educated, sound, and transparent decisions. Being an ex-teacher helps me understand the frustrations of our staff, and I will use this knowledge to represent them based on that portion of my background. No decision will move forward without questioning how it will affect our staff, but I'll find a decision will be made based on the best interest of our true constituents, the students. Their futures, hopes, and dreams suffer when the adults can't get past their own feelings and beliefs. If elected, I will fight and make decisions on behalf of your kids as if they were my own, without undermining or denying that they are first and foremost yours.
All right, so that will conclude our question and our question and answer segment. It will conclude our closing statements. A couple of things before you leave. Some of the questions tonight referenced policies, rules, regulations, even laws. We have some material up here. If you're curious to what those are, please feel free to come up and take a look. I'd also like to make sure you acknowledge Stina. She worked very hard to put this on. And having been in this position last year several times, I just want to personally acknowledge and thank all of you candidates for being so well prepared and so well versed on the topics that are ahead of you and the problems that need to be solved and the issues that the community is bringing forward to you. Thank you very much for the time and effort that you put in and the courage you have to run for this office. It's not an easy job, so thank you for that.